lilacs are blooming, and we have some nature for you on the show. Shelter provided by the Richland Center High School class of 1968. We will head to a beaver pond. We'll hear a presentation given recently by Cornell about his observations from a year of watching the beavers at work, and he gave this for the RAREA organization, Richland Area Retired Educators.
Ancestors are looking down on us and saying, thank you for keeping the chapter going for 50 years. So congratulations, because we are now in the 50th year. Our theme today is advice from a beaver. That's what you have here. This is your souvenir take-home bookmark. Advice from a beaver. Because today is all about beavers and other kind of wildlife. I especially like the last bit of advice that says, don't be a stick in the mud. And there you go. So don't be a stick in the mud, which many of you are not. We have several introductions that will be coming up, as those will come at various times. So we will move on to the words of wisdom. The Ojibwe are among Wisconsin's original First Nation inhabitants. And for those of us attending this year's WRA convention in Lac de Flambeau, we will be in the heart of present-day Ojibwe territory. The beaver represents wisdom in Ojibwe culture because the beaver uses its natural gift wisely for survival and alters its environment in an environmentally friendly and sustainable way for the benefit of the beaver's family. To cherish knowledge is to know wisdom, as this Ojibwe legend of how the beaver got his tail will demonstrate. Once upon a time, there was a beaver that loved to brag about his tail. One day, while taking a walk, the beaver stopped to talk to a bird. The beaver said to the bird,
"Don't you love my fluffy tail?"
"Why, yes, I do, little beaver," said the bird.
"Don't you wish your feathers were as fluffy as my tail? Don't you wish your feathers were as strong as my tail? Don't you wish your feathers were just as beautiful as my tail?" the beaver asked.
"Why do you think so much of your tail, little beaver?" asked the bird. This made the beaver mad, and he walked away. After walking for a while, he stopped for a drink by the river and saw a muskrat. He walked to the muskrat and said,
"Hello, little muskrat. What do you think about my tail?"
"Well, it is very beautiful and big and fluffy," answered the muskrat. "Is it also a strong tail?"
"Why, yes it is," the beaver answered. "Do you wish you had a tail like mine?"
"I didn't say I wanted a tail like yours. I just asked if it was strong," the muskrat said with a disgusted voice.
The beaver quickly turned and began walking back to his home. He was angry because he felt that the animals were being rude to him. He was very upset and decided to take out his anger by cutting down trees.
After cutting down a couple of trees, he came to a very large one. He knew that it would be a great challenge for him, so he went to it. But as he was cutting, he kept thinking about his tail. He didn't notice that he was cutting at a bad angle. Before he knew what was happening, the tree began to fall toward him. He jumped to get out of the way, but he didn't jump fast enough. The huge tree fell on his beautiful tail. He tugged and pulled, and finally dug away the earth to free himself.
When he finally pulled his tail from under the tree, he saw that it was flat. The beaver was very sad and started to cry. As he was crying, he heard a voice. It was the Creator.
"Why are you crying?" asked the Creator.
"A tree has crushed my beautiful tail," the beaver cried. "Now, no one will like me."
The Creator told him that a beaver is not liked for his tail, but for his kindness and wisdom. He also told him how to use his flat tail. "Now your tail will help you swim rapidly," the Creator said. "And when you want to signal a message to a friend, all you have to do is slap your tail on the water."
Hearing this made the beaver happy again. When the animals saw his flattened tail, they were shocked. But the beaver said, "It is better this way."
From that day on, the beaver never bragged about his tail, and all the animals liked him.
That's how the beaver got his flat tail.
There you go. All right, we will move forward. It is my pleasure today to introduce our program speaker, who has become a very popular guy in our area, on the radio and in various places. So imagine, if you will, the patience it would take to sit and to observe anything for over 400 hours over the course of 1 year. I cannot. However, today's program speaker, Al Cornell, a former Muscadet resident and now living with his wife Sally on a farm near West Lima, where Al grew up, did just that and turned his study into an absolutely amazing book, which is there and also back there. Al has been studying area wildlife for many years, including during his career before retirement as a wildlife technician with the Wisconsin DNR. For the next 30 minutes or so, we have the great privilege to hear from Al as he gives us a shorter summary of his observations. And in Al's own words, "It may be a cliche, but beavers build it and the other will come." You will soon see the other through his amazing photography that complements his words and dry sense of humor throughout his book. A Year at a Beaver Pond, Observations from One Little Dynamic Ecosystem. And, you know, if you were looking for that extra special gift for a grandchild or for anyone, Al and Sally will be selling his book during today's event. And I guarantee you that you will not be disappointed, and neither will your receiver. And if that isn't all enough, Al is the grandfather for one of our 2024 RAREA Scholarship applicants, Bryson Clarkson. Let's all welcome Al Cornell. There you go, Al.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Privileged to be here and to speak to you people. Yeah, I finally wrote a book. I've got a daughter who's getting to the point where she's talking about joining you one of these days. This is Sonia Clarkson, that some of you may know. And she's, you know, so I'm old. Did you ask about something?
Yes. Amy is going to be here any minute.
Okay, yeah. So, I'll talk to you about the book, figure out where I'm at here.
Billy, can you give the lights?
So I spent the 400 and some hours there and probably shot about 5,000 photos. I've got 36 here that we can look at today, and there's 135 in the book, so I'll put together. So it's a fun project. This, of course, Canada goose, and the early morning light gave us the golden pond part of the time with the light reflecting off from the hillside, and before the direct light hit the pond, it would give that texture to it. So Canada geese were among the things there. One of the things that I really anticipated was that there would be wood ducks, and they didn't disappoint. In fact, if you look through the book, yeah, it's about a beaver pond, and it's observations from one little dynamic ecosystem, and it involves all the other critters. Wood ducks get more coverage in the book than beavers themselves, in fact. Beaver feed by eating bark off from, they like willow really well, aspen and a few other things, but they roll that stick and they peel all the bark off and they eat it. And this would have been in the early morning just before the beaver was going to bed, so I don't know if you want to call it breakfast or supper, but he's getting ready to go to bed. The small birds that come around were quite numerous. This is a common yellowthroat, and they're the only member of the warbler family that nests out in the wetlands. Warblers are called wood warblers, and most of them are in shrubs or trees or whatever. And so this one, he's looking at that dewdrop there. I guess I do have a pointer here. I'll just try to see. Got to know which way to work this thing. Yeah, okay. So see the dewdrop he's staring at. And I can't tell you whether he took it or not, but he was interested in the dewdrop. You'll also notice the cornstalk there, and that's kind of brings us to the conflict that comes up relative to beavers. They've certainly, over the last 100 years, had an image of being a nuisance. That they were the original reason for the European settlers to travel across the nation because of that first, I've been told, first billion-dollar industry was that fur industry, and beaver were wiped out. I believe that over 99% of them dropped from 1800 to 1900. That was just utilize the resources that were there. The red-winged blackbirds kind of dominated the noise that was there most of the time, as you know that they do in the wetlands, but the toads, when they came in for their mating season, overpowered them, and all of a sudden all you could hear was this toad talk that was going on. Mallards were the second most common duck in the area. The kingbird is a member of the flycatcher family. He's kind of on the bigger end of it. And all kinds of wildlife. You've got that hierarchy thing going on in which the larger ones pursue and chase after the other ones. And so he liked to chase after them. But when the swallows got too numerous, he gave up on that because chasing swallows, just didn't cut it. They're pretty swift, and so he quit chasing. The ducks came, didn't disappoint. May 31st, the first arrivals came, and she just had 4. It's hard for them from the time they hatch to make it to the water because they're up somewhere on the hills and usually in abandoned pileated woodpecker nests. The woodpecker may use 1 year and the ducks may use it for the next 4 or 5 years. And so the ranges overlap pretty good between those two species. The belted kingfisher, this is a female. She has the orange feathers on the breast. And one thing they do is they catch fish that look like they're way too big. If you try swallowing that thing, you're going to choke to death. The fish, I believe, is from tail to nose is probably as long as from her throat to her rump, and yet they can swallow those fish, and they start digesting them, and then they can go back to the nest and feed the young on that partially digested material. Little beaver came over the dam. He went over and cut off a little willow sprig there that was growing up through the dam, and he comes back across and feeds on it. Raccoons, as you get to the middle, to the summer solstice, the days are long and the nights are short. And so I think they have to get out a little more then in the daytime to feed, and especially when you got more than one mouth to feed. They would come in. They stick their paws down in the water, they rub them together, and they can pick out the larvae and so forth out of the pond from the feel of it, and then their paw goes to their mouth, and so they're eating. red-winged blackbirds, they don't like anything messing with their territory, and so they're going to chase hummingbirds or eagles or whatever shows up there. They'll go after. And this one doesn't seem to be too impressed with the blind sitting there with the camera lens sticking out of it. Is having something to say about that. The second brood of wood ducks showed up on July 12th, which is pretty late, and that would indicate that this was a re-nester, the first nest destroyed maybe by raccoons or something, and so she had re-nested and comes in late with them. And they know what an earthworm is the day they're born. Mom used to raise chickens, you know, she'd get these day-old chickens and have them in the coop there, 75 of them. I always loved to take an earthworm and throw it in there because those chickens knew what to do with that earthworm, and they would run around and put on quite a show. This was my hero of the pond. You see here that there's a stubbed leg. I think probably snapping turtle got a hold of that leg, and in the ensuing battle, the bird lost that. But this is completely healed over, and it was hopping around on one leg and sticking its bill down into the water to find those delicacies. That, you know, that bottom of the pond is just layered with, just crawling with larvae and so forth of various kinds of insects that live there, and just produced a great amount of material for the trout and the birds and the raccoons and whatever else was after it. Big old long-legged critter here, the crane fly. Some people call them giant mosquitoes, but they don't bite us and they don't eat blood or any of that kind of stuff. And so they're good food for the cedar waxwing. As the summer wore on, we started getting some flowers on the jewelweed, and I knew, okay, there's going to be some hummingbirds show up. But the jewelweed came in as a pioneer species on the new mud for the dam. It couldn't compete out in the rest of the wetland with the things that were growing there, and so it just, the 70-foot wide dam is just covered with jewelweed. And I didn't realize, okay, now there's 10,000 blossoms there, and hummingbirds going zip, 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 and how do you take a picture of that? So I would focus on the flower closest to the blind, one that was real close there, every time I saw a hummingbird working my direction, and hope that he used that particular flower, and so I got a few shots of the hummingbird. And later, a little bit later, the jewelweed that has the other name of touch-me-not because it gets these seed pods, and the seeds start showing through as the pods start turning from green to more clear. They get black or real dark. And kids just love to grab a hold of them because they explode. And they'll shoot those seeds 10 feet. So there's a pod here and a pod up there. So this is later in the season, and this is into September and the last of the jewelweed. So this is the setup. The blind here, the camera lens sticking out through there. This is the willow. And that was very important to my project because all the little birds were landing in that. And I know the beavers just left that one willow for me. Maybe it was a little hard for them to cut that one down. But anyway, they left that. You can see it better in the reflection than you can up above. Just back there a little ways is the road along Highway B between West Lima and Bloom City, and I'd pull off there and go in and sit there, and people would talk about, what's that guy doing down there all the time? Why is he there every time I go by? As fall progresses, we see the colors of the maples on the hillside reflected off from the water. This is a baby muskrat. You know, there are a lot of species that produce a lot of young, and they're the species that are going to be preyed upon. Predators are looking for them. If somebody didn't eat them, we'd be knee-deep in mice after about a year. So we're glad that somebody is thinning out the rabbits and the muskrats and other things. Even though he's cute, he very well likely will end up feeding mink or something. This is a Wilson snipe. We had a few shorebirds that would show up there. This guy could spend an hour going 3 feet, sticking his bill in. And he always bobs his body as he does it. And so it looks like a continuous happy meal. He's just bobbing up and down, sticking his beak in. He'll stick it in the same hole 4 or 5 times. I don't know if he thought he felt something there. The end of the bill is prehensile. It's got a lot of nerve cells in it, so he could feel what he was getting a hold of. And so these things don't just fill their crop up with whatever they happen to hit on. They're feeling for what they want. And he was picking out the larvae of the insects and so forth as he was feeding. Bluebirds were around there pretty common. I actually thought they would probably spend more time at the pond because of the many insects that are hatching there and flying up over, but they came to it some of the time, but not maybe as much as I thought. As we come into springtime then, on a really frosty morning, we got a killdeer that has landed and is coming across and feeding. One of the things I don't have a picture of here or in the book was the larvae of those crane flies, like the waxwing hat. They're grubby looking things, about 1.5 inches long and black gooey things, but the robins like them. The killdeer was feeding on them. It was fun being there just because of the things that would come in, and to have the confidence of this wildlife that they would land this close to me. This is 20 feet from the lens, and I got the 1:400 zoom, and I had to zoom down to about 200 in order to get a picture like this. And when you're photographing wildlife, it's usually you're wanting them to be closer and fill the frame, but these actually were very comfortable sitting there waiting. And I want you to notice the coloration of the female, how brown and her colors are compared to the male, the chestnut and the white and the total coloration, because when we come to the last picture, there's going to be a little weird thing going on there. This was the hardest picture to get. The fish were jumping all over the place, but I watched. When I'd see the nose come out of the water, I'd push the button, and all I'd get was a ripple of water. They're out. I think they're about 0.2 of a second. You know, they're out, gone, and I couldn't get a picture. So what do? Well, I'm still working on wanting to get that trout picture. So I started watching these midges that were hatching, and this is the midge up here at the top. This one missed it when he jumped. But I started watching them, and they pop up in the pupa stage. When they hit the surface of the water, they break out of the pupa stage, and they run, fly across the surface of the water for 3 or 4 feet, and they fly away. It's about 20 seconds from the time they go up until they're flighted. If they spend too much time there, they're more apt to be down the trout hatch, and so they have gotten this down to where they go away really quickly. So I started focusing on this midge that came to the surface of the water, and when it flew, I took a picture because I saw a couple trout jump just as the midge flew. As it flew, I took a picture, and for some weird reason, I got one that was completely out of the water, and that was a blessing to get that. Mink were pretty common. They were running around there quite often. The wood duck, I really like the coloration of the silhouette here because against the background it shows up better than the head. The beaver themselves, we had a snowfall in April. That's why you got the green grass growing up through there. This was in 23. Middle of April, we had about 4 or 5 inches of snowfall. And the beaver came out. I wasn't sitting in the blind here. I'd walked up around to well, it's actually back up on the road, shooting from there. But the beaver had knocked this tree down, but it kind of hinged here, and they couldn't shoo it all the way off, and so they were reaching up trying to get whatever they could. And of course, in the spring, they're hungry. They have some fat storage in their tail, and but they of course, have used up most of their supply. They have a stash of food that they've put together for the winter too, that they can swim out to get. The next day, it happened. The otter came by and gave me a picture, and I was thinking that it isn't going to happen because my time was getting along to where I wasn't going to be going there very much more. And I'd seen the otter 5 times, and he'd come out of the foliage on top of the dam and into the water, and I wouldn't see him anymore, or I'd see him down the channel the other way, and he'd roll over once, and the otter just isn't going to give me anything. And then this day he showed up, and he swam around the pond for 45 minutes, and gave me a lot of opportunity to take some pictures. And again, I like the light because this is that early morning. The sun has not yet quite reached the pond. You can see in his eye that the sun is showing through a little bit through the trees on the east side, and it's reflecting off the hill on the west to give it that golden color. And you see the water droplets as he raises his head. He's 35 feet from me, and then he spends a bunch of time. And then a couple weeks later, there was 3 otters swimming around in the pond, but the conditions weren't as good for that. Many different warblers that come in. The yellow-rumped warbler is the first one to arrive. They stay in the United States, southern states, instead of going to Central and South America, as many of the warblers do. And these are a little more adapted to the cold. They can eat seeds and fruit compared to most of the warblers, depending entirely on the insect population. And so they come through this time of year. From now until the end of May is the main time most of the warblers will be coming through. And he's picking little larvae off from the pond. It doesn't show up well here, but he's got some of them in his beak that he's feeding on there. And the water comes out of the ground at 47 degrees, and so the pond never freezes completely over. And many birds then are attracted to it because on these cold spring mornings, there's no insects flying anyplace else, but it's a little warmer there, and so it's a great place for them. So the beaver are providing it for many different users who are taking advantage of these tiny little ecosystems that the beavers produce. So here's a mink during a sleet storm. You can see some of those white specks there. It's sleeting a little bit during that picture. Another warbler that comes in fairly early is the palm warbler, and adds its touch of color. There's the picture that we decided to put on the front cover of the book, the beaver feeding close. And this one's really close to me at the blind, just a few feet away. The spotted sandpiper is very vocal, doing a lot of hollering. Got especially loud when he was sitting on top of the blind. He kept me awake. And so as we came into 23, then into later in the year of 23, we had a lot of that warmer weather and drier weather, and so there was more deer showing up at the pond. You could hear them splashing around a lot of times down below the dam, and then once in a while one would show up there. So then this is that last picture, and what you got here, you've got a wood duck with a typical female head and male coloration on her body, and you got another one just like it. And then there's a male back there just for comparison. You can see the red eye and the orange beak and the chin strap. And so this has got the female head, and I wondered what was going on. I helped band 4,700 wood ducks and photographed hundreds of them, and I'd never seen anything like this before, and I wondered what was happening. And I found out that what happens in these old birds, especially if you got birds that the males are a lot more colorful than the females, when the female gets old and can't produce enough estrogen, she starts losing the ability to have a different coloration from the male, and she goes back to that basic pattern of the male. So she actually looks more like a male overall, but yet she's got. So this combination just threw me because I wasn't used to that at all. So at this point, then, if you got some questions, we can talk about whatever you got. How much time have I got? Anybody know? Where's maybe I got all day. You want the long version?
Sure. I haven't heard the timer go off yet, so
Okay.
you're still good.
Yeah, okay. Oh, there it is. I forgot.
10 more minutes.
Okay, so we got 10 minutes.
I'll stay up there.
Yeah. So, anybody got any questions? All right.
What kind of a schedule did you have? I mean, like how many approximately how many days a week or how many hours in a day?
Yeah, I started out thinking I'll go down there and shoot a few pictures. The pond showed up in the spring after the winter snow had flattened all the vegetation so you could see it. They built it the year before. And Sally and I were driving down the road toward Bloom City, and we saw this eagle flying over. And he stooped. He went into that speedy dive toward the pond, and just as he was getting near, and this was in early April, a wood duck just went frantically tearing out to escape him and got away. And, oh, well, I'll check into photographing there. So I called Paul Swagger, Paul and Shelley own the property there, and he said, yeah, he says, I think I'll have somebody tear the beaver dam out in June. And so I went in a couple of times in April and took a few pictures, and I sped up a little bit in May, and I talked to Paul again, and he, well, I'll leave it a little longer, and it wasn't too long until, yeah, I'm going to leave it for a year so you can finish the project, and then he never did tear it out. So, but yeah, so I would come in most of the time 45 minutes or half an hour before sunrise and set in the blind for 3.5 to 5 hours, and probably usually 2 or 3 times a week then as I got more involved in the project and thought about it. So the book starts out with the beginning, which gets a little bit of April before I start, May, June, July through the year, and then I got a little bit tacked on at the end too of after the year process that went on. But yeah, most of the time it was morning. Sometimes I went in the afternoon for the evening session to see what was going on. But sometimes it was boring. It was boring in the winter. There just wasn't anything happening at the pond through the winter. But then other times, some animals would detect my presence by smell or whatever, and would leave. Raccoons, if the wind was in the wrong direction, when they came in, they departed real quickly. And at other times, things would be real comfortable. I guess I didn't have any pictures of the great blue heron here, but he did pull out a trout that was a good foot long, finally. But he had to work there quite a bit. What happens in the pond is that you got deeper water, and so the trout actually grow larger there than they do in the rest of the stream because they can stay in that deeper water and avoid predation to a great extent.
So what's the official policy on removing or leaving beaver dams?
It's pretty much landowners' discretion. You know, if they're flooding roads or flooding cornfields or, you know, cutting down trees, don't want them to cut down. We are supposed to be a little smarter than them, and we should be able to coexist. And there's a lot of things done now as far as pond levelers that you put in to deceive the beaver from being able to figure out how to keep the water level from dropping in the pond. You put a culvert or whatever through and protect it so that they can't plug it up. And so there's a lot of things that can be done. And beavers, the huge upside of the beaver is not only my emphasis here was on the ecosystem, the one little part of it and everything that was coming there and using the pond. And it was just that tiny, my 1/10 of an acre ecosystem was probably the most intensely used ecosystem in the county. You know, it just or in the Driftless area. It's just that much usage that goes on in that little beaver pond that they built for their purposes, but it is used by so many other things. But as far as the plus side of the beaver, if you get out in the west, you see a picture of where the mountainsides are charred, and there's a green strip up through where the ditch is, where the beavers keep the water table higher, keep streams that are usually intermittent and go dry in the summer, flowing all year round, and that higher water table, and so everything greens up there. And they actually form a fire break in a place of refuge for things trying to escape the fire, along with keeping the water table higher for the people who want to use irrigation or whatever is part of the benefits. So there's just a lot of upside in connection with with the beaver. Something that we didn't know. Beaver were wiped out. We don't even see and understand what these streams look like in connection with the time frame that beaver were there before white settlers started knocking the population down and out. But it was a really different ecosystem, and one that what we're learning more about. A lot more people are becoming interested in. Let's keep the beaver. Let's figure out how to coexist with them. And right now, there's a lot of movement in California, where the wildlife department there for years said there never were beaver in California. Now, why not? Beaver every place else in North America. Why weren't they in California? It was because that people from China and maybe Polynesians, I don't know. Anyway, they came around to hunt the sea otters for their fur value. When they ran out of sea otters, they went on shore and they started taking these beaver because they have, well, the felt from the beavers is used in hats. They say that the beaver price is going up a little now because of this television show Yellowstone and the big hats, and it's becoming more popular, and that they use that, still use that as the greatest felt there is for making these hats, is that beaver fur.
How in the world did you have the patience to sit there, because you weren't posing these wildlife? That flying fish photo just is amazing. And obviously you were sitting there in your camouflage hut, camera ready, to wait for something. How did you have the patience to do that? Is he that patient at home? That's just amazing.
Sally, do you want the microphone?
Al's this kind of person. I ask him a question one day, and 2 days later, he might answer me. He's very patient.
That's just amazing. It's just admirable.
I just say I'm not really patient. I just string together a lot of impatience.
I mean, I haven't seen pictures like that since the good old days of National Geographic. I mean, have you always been a photographer?
Quite a while. You know, I monkeyed around the camera when I didn't know anything and couldn't take any good pictures or anything.
They're unbelievable.
But probably about in the late 80s or 90s, somewhere around there, I got a little more serious about it. Picked up the pace a little on it.
Well, Al, we want to thank you very much. It's just an astounding. And we want to give you this extra little gift, appreciation.
Well,
So thank you very much.
thank
So,
you. Appreciate it.
yeah, thank you, Al.
Maybe graduation parties in this shelter anytime now. And of course, it's the season for playing outdoors and kayaking and canoeing. And we hope you'll come back next week and every week to see our town.